Good evening and bienvenue. I'd like to call the May 1st, 2023 Newport City Council meeting to order in the council chambers at 6:30 p.m. Before we get started, I'd just like to make a slight change to the agenda. Agenda item number 6, appointment of assessor, is going to be put down to the executive session to discuss appointment of a public officer or employee, 1 VSA 3A3. So we'll have 2 in that executive session. Let's see. Present at tonight's meeting are Mr. Charbonneau, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Vachon, Mr. Johnson, City Clerk Treasurer, and Ms. Dolgan, City Manager. I'd like to thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. Whether you're here in person or on the link, everyone's welcome. The second agenda item is to approve the minutes of the April 17th, 2023 regular City Council meeting, and then the April 24th, 2023 special meeting minutes. So do I hear a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 17th, 2023?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Vachon. That's Mr. Vachon. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the April 24th, 2023 Newport City Council special meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vachon. Second by Mr. Curtis. Discussion on approval of the special meeting minutes? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Agenda item 3 is, bless you, is public comment. And this is my first meeting where I actually have public that wants to comment. So we will start with Pam Lads.
Thank you. I'm Pam Lads. I'm a Newport City resident, and I'm commenting because I see that the water and sewer stuff is on the agenda, and that it's a presentation, which means that we, the public, are not able to comment or ask questions. So we can only do that right now, or hopefully next week. This is 2 parts. One is I wanted to thank you for making sure that we got these on Friday, because we would never have been able to read through all of this lot, particularly as it was printed sideways, if we'd only got it this morning. So much appreciated. 2, there's a comment in here which uses the words failure to adjust in 2022. That, I assume, is in relation to a presentation that was made to the council. At that point, those who were on the council at that time made a decision to not make a decision, basically, and to bring it back when appropriate. That is not a failure on your part, and I want to be real clear about that. None of us think that we were having failed with that issue. That's not an okay use of the English language in my model of the world. The other piece is, it says that after the presentation, if any of us have questions, we'd put them in writing and send them to the city manager. Okay, we can do that. My suggestion is, as we have no way of knowing if we'll get those questions answered, and and I'm sure depend partly on how many there are, that we should copy them to all of you, so that you at least know the questions that are being asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment. And the next is Ann Chirillo.
Yes, I've got a copy of something I wrote up and I didn't have time to type it, I'm sorry. But it contains some of my thoughts. One brief follow-up on what Pam said. The failure last time was not of the council to decide to vote on that. The failure was that inadequate evidence or a basis for making the decision to raise rates was presented to the council, and that's where the failure, I submit to you, occurred. The second thing I would like to say is that the evidence or the basis, from what I read of the outline, is still lacking, or the information is still going to be contradictory. For instance, the auditor's report for 2022 in the city's annual report on page 86 shows how much cash was in the funds at the beginning of that fiscal year and how much was in it at the end of that fiscal year. So the beginning sewer fund had about $100,000 in it, more or less. And at the end, it had about $182,000. In other words, the sewer fund increased in money by $65,000. The water fund had $568,000 at the beginning, and at the end it had $1,310,000, so that the water fund increased by, I don't know, about 7. Thank you, I need the help. So that means that monies came into the fund and bills were completely paid by the fund, and you had an additional surplus of money in the fund. That's
Could just finish up in the next 10 or 15 seconds.
okay. That's not a loss. And the second thing that I would quickly say, there's so many to pick from.
I think I'm going to have to stop.
Just one thing. Assuming that there is a loss, assuming for a minute there is a loss, there's two aspects that have to be considered: increasing the income or decreasing the expenses. And that analysis has not been made.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is Jennifer Bjurling.
So I'm going to speak really fast because I got a lot of things to say. First of all, as council members, you must develop a basic understanding of cash versus accrual accounting. They are not interchangeable, and the city officials flip-flop back and forth between the two, using whichever one works to their advantage for the issue at hand, and this has to stop. The city uses cash accounting for its business operations. Hence, when setting taxes or water and sewer rates, cash accounting data is what needs to be used. Contrary to Ms. Dolgan's statement that the sewer fund had a $378,000 loss and the water fund had a $163,000 loss in the audit report, one must examine the statement of cash flows to arrive at an approximation of a cash accounting number, and this is found on page 9 of the audit. And the net cash produced by operating activities was $321,880 positive for sewer and $844,060 positive for water. Both were profitable. And if you don't understand these principles, then I truly believe that the auditor needs to be brought in to answer questions. I have spoken to Andy Bashung. He is more than willing to answer questions, and contrary to Ms. Dolgan's assertion last year that he refused to make himself available due to the political nature of the issue, he was more than happy to answer all of my questions. So I would urge the council to bring him in so you can answer these, have these questions posed. I've provided you all with a history of the revenues and expenses for water and sewer from the annual reports, which are cash accounting. One must pay particular attention to fiscal year 16-17. This is the first year that the current rate structure went into effect. One will note that with the new rate structure, sewer had a surplus of $531,515.
Could
And-
you just finish up in the next 10 or 15 seconds? Thank
And
you.
water had a surplus of $359,000. You folks do not have a revenue problem. You need to look at the data that I put in front of you. The revenue stream has remained relatively unchanged. What happened is expenses skyrocketed after the city discovered that this new rate structure was producing so much more money.
Thank you, Ms. Dearlin. The next is Jennifer Hopkins.
Yes, I'm Jennifer Hopkins, resident of Newport, and I served on the water committee that created the rates that are in question for going up. And one thing I'd like to point out is, one, not addressing the issue of whether a rate increase is due or not. One of the things you have to realize is that doing this rate increase straight across the board when your proposed loss, if that is the case, is 300,000 in one and 100 and some odd thousand in another, does not seem rational. They're two separate funds. They, if the loss is true in sewer, then the sewer rate should go up percentage-wise higher. And the other thing is, I think that in the presentation, if anybody's seen it, the rate schedule was presented in a very, very confusing way. There is no multiple meter rate. There's one rate for your meter, and that's it. And by the way, if you would like to, the water committee tried to regroup and discuss increasing and incentivizing putting water meters in, but we were never called to meet. And I'm sure the existing members would be willing to.
Thank you
So
very much.
that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins.
Well, I guess full disclosure, I did send an email to the council this weekend saying very much the same thing.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 4 is a presentation addressing the City of Newport sewer and water rates. I'd like to hand it over to my colleagues. Ms. Dolgan, are you spearheading this, or Rebecca? Take it away.
Well, I'm inviting both Becky and Stacy to come up to the council table.
Thank you, Becky and Stacy.
We are in the most unenviable position after hearing what we just heard, but they're going to
Thank you.
present to you some facts that hopefully will be enlightening.
Great. Thanks for being here
Good evening.
and speaking.
Not a happy subject, I guess, but one that we need to talk
necessary.
to.
I'm sorry, could you please speak up?
Oh,
Some of
you know
us
what,
have
we-
hearing problems.
Well, thank you so much to Mike for setting this up for us.
Testing.
I can hear you. Just-
That's the last page. What happens to Clint Reese? Clint Reese? It's all over.
Should we do that, Jen? Well,
you're gonna get it. If it works for you for this afternoon. But I can't put it up here.
Does anyone need a hard copy? There are a couple up here.
Yes.
Does anyone want a hard copy?
That's all I have right now. I can give you this.
Which one?
Hey, you want my card?
I'll share with John.
Technology's great, your work is great. There it
Time
is.
to brace yourself.
There we go. Thank you. So we have a microphone up here. If you have trouble hearing, could you just like raise your hand or give me some sort of a sign?
Okay. All right, can everybody hear me? Okay. So I'm not gonna go through every single line in here. I think the council's had a chance to look at it over the weekend. I'm probably gonna go to the current status. And, back in 2019, we lost, a revenue source of caliche, which at the time we were probably averaging $180,000 a year. And that had been used for quite a few years to help keep the sewer rate down. And we have never made up that source of revenue. And it kind of got shifted up, you'll see in the next slide, that $180,000 got absorbed up into the user fees. Because of, we thought at the time that if we lost the revenue source, we're gonna have to make up that revenue somewhere else. Saying that, expenses stay the same. And because COVID happened, we didn't feel that we should come to the council and ask for a rate increase because things were just too crazy at the time. So we didn't want to put that burden on people. And then now here we are 3 years later and we still haven't done any kind of a rate increase. And our expenses have been going up in the meantime due to COVID-related issues, our materials. So, and Tom can talk more about that if you want to hear more about that. So we have been in the process of metering everybody so that we can get a true look at what we're pumping for water versus what's being used and identify any leaks. Because, we're pumping water, we're treating it, we're paying the state of Vermont for it. So if we can conserve, that would be a good thing. But unfortunately fortunately and unfortunately what happens when you meter is people conserve water, which is what you want them to do, but then your revenue starts to go down. And that's what we've been seeing. If we go back to that slide before, you'll notice that in our actuals, so you'll notice in the actuals that we were staying, pretty much the same, and now our revenue has started dropping down. Went up a little bit through the pandemic, but now we're dropping off again. And this year's actuals, we're down again. And the same thing in the water department. So we went up, people were staying home during COVID. The revenue went up, now we're dropping again. And as we encourage people to install meters, that's gonna keep dropping if we don't increase our rates. So I know it was mentioned about the expenditures. And, you know, we've had a lot of things come up with expenditures. The price of everything because of COVID has gone up. We have state mandates that we have to do. And like I said, Tom can talk a little bit more about that, but if you look on the right-hand side, it's listed there. You know, we have the wire tower, the Gardner Park siphon project, the Size Ave water line, the Bluff Road pump station, you know, all these things that we need to do, that the state's mandating us to do, or it needs to be updated. We've had other pieces of equipment at the plant or the wire department that you have to fix. The brakes, you have to fix it. You can't say we don't have that in the budget this year. If we can't pump water, we can't pump water, people don't have water. So, you know, there's sometimes there's things that maybe we can say, okay, we can wait another year on. But we can't keep kicking that can down the road, because the more that we kick it down the road, the worse it is on the other hand. So, it's always a struggle with the water and sewer. It's not like something else that you can just say, no, I don't want to do that. And we have to keep everything working. Or, you know, maybe we've had a year where we've had a lot of big water or sewer breaks. And you gotta repair them, we can't have it shooting up out of the ground. And the other thing that we had put in here too is that our water and sewer ratepayers aren't necessarily the same as our taxpayers. Because you have people that don't pay taxes, you have businesses, you know, so that makes a difference.
Yeah, to that though, we have, like, the hospital's not a taxpayer, all the churches are not taxpayers, nonprofits. So a good majority of those all contribute to water and sewer, but they don't contribute, or to taxes. And then in this rate structure, they contribute to water and sewer. So we shifted that way.
So on the rate sheet, it was suggested for us to do 10% increase, roughly a 10%. And I say it's roughly 10% because one of the things that we tried to do was to round the numbers off. It can be very difficult to explain our water and sewer rate structure to people. And if you can say to them it's $40 a quarter versus $39.16, it's an easier conversation. The same thing when you get into, you know, how much they're paying per gallon. It just makes that conversation easier. So, you know, we as close as to 10% with keeping those numbers somewhat a little rounder and a little easier to talk about. And those are all of our rates that we bill out every quarter.
Yes, it is.
We have all that rate structure. And some of it is even more confusing in our rate structure. The highlighted colors. The orange ones are flat rates. And then the yellow are variable rates. So variable rates are what you pay for your usage. And then the other ones are what is referred to by our accounting software as stepped fixed rates with a variable component.
Yes.
So in other words, when they go over a certain max, quite often we'll have somebody come in and say, why my sewer, what do we refer to it as? Maybe you can talk better about this because you probably get the questions more than I do.
Well, yeah, because we call it the usage base rate, but it's really not a fixed base rate. There's a variable after you go over 13,500 gallons, and so people need to know how that's calculated, and it's all calculated based on the rates that we currently have, and then it's all per 1,000 gallons. So everything starts it reads at the first gallon, but you're not billed until the first 1,000. So I don't know how else you need to, if you have any questions regarding our rates, but.
That's just an industrial, the,
No, we have, all, industrial, commercial, residential, and, non-residential. Anybody that's metered has the step structure.
oh yeah, I see right here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 769.
So we have what we were looking at as a timeline, as there was a 60-day ordinance to take effect. So if we do decide to increase the rates, they don't become effective until 60 days after that.
I just wanted you guys to know too that, they're saying there's not a loss of operations, but in the, accounting, or in the annual audit, you will see on page 8, the total operation expenses, and that will give you, because that takes into account depreciation and everything else that we use.
Is that a handout that we
That's
have?
in our,
It's in our audit report.
the audit
Oh,
report,
okay.
yeah.
And that is page 8?
Yes.
And there was something else you want to mention.
I think that was just just that there was multiple rates and that, that was the loss that we were told to look at. Yeah.
Thank you. Rebecca, did you want to say anything else?
No, I think we're just, what you have for questions, where you want us to go from here.
Well, I appreciate you sitting here and telling us about that. It's not an easy subject, but you did a great job. And I'm going to open it up to questions from the council. Council? Any questions?
This is really not a question, but it stirred up a lot of stuff. I come in and I keep hearing both sides, and then a lot of questions came about when departments raised, instead of 15, they went to 20% off. And I said, well, what if we just pull everything out of the water and sewer, all this, and just put it right back into the general fund, as that's where the money is. At which time, I got a quick education on the fact that 26% of this city doesn't pay tax. But they do pay water and sewer. So if we pulled their portions out of the water and sewer fund, we're putting it on the backs of the ones that pay tax. So 26% of the city doesn't pay any tax at all. So I thought, oh, I guess that wasn't just a real quick fix. And I just come in here dumb and happy, and this is easy fix. We'll just pull everything out. And then there was also the fact that you need personnel, auditing, and all this good stuff. So I said, okay, so how about we just, that was a suggestion. They came up with the data within a week, and I said, well, how about September? That's when we'll start the new budget process. And so that idea went down the tubes real fast, that we just can't pull out the city managers, city clerk, treasurers out of the capital fund and just throw it into the big one, or the one that has to pay for itself. And, wow, I knew that we had a lot of non-taxpayers. They're all, but we pull that out and brought it back into the general fund. And then, okay, we can't do any of that until the next budget process anyways. Because starting 1 July, we've already got that budget, it's been approved by the taxpayers. So, I'm still gonna, whoever's gonna be sitting there, I'm gonna be saying, okay, about September timeframe, we better try to get this fixed. And for the next year's budget, and I would even suggest that if people are interested in it, volunteer some time to assist us with the problem, just not find fault and then go from there. So, come September, when we start the next budget project, because I figure we could just go ahead and do it, but you can't. We've already approved the budget from 1 July this year going through. But we do have time to maybe fix some things that maybe aren't right. But, yeah, I come in here dumb and happy. We're just gonna move it over here. No, it's not a wash. 26% of the ones that are paying for water and sewer wouldn't have to do it if we pulled that portion out of their taxes. So the individuals that put that bug in my ear, I've already told them, we gotta find some other way to smooth this all over. So that's all I've got to say. If we need one other time, and that was way back when Mr. Ward was the city manager, and he wanted a massive bite in water and sewer. And I said, well, if we've been losing a little bit every year, I was able to talk to council into doing it over a 3-year period. And if we really need that much, then we're gonna have to increase it, because that has to pay for itself. But if there's people out there that really know the systems, maybe smarter than we are, don't know. But I just the other day thought, man, this is an easy fix. And no, shot down fast. But if that's for those that weren't happy with our departments putting more money into the enterprise fund, their portion. And I said, well, just take it out. No, can't do that. Not right now anyway. So come September, when we start the new budget process, then I would hope that we come in with helpful suggestions and not maybe, finding fault, and we all get together and maybe we can fix this. That's it, thank you.
Thanks for that, John. Actually, that's a perfect segue. I wasn't gonna ask a question until you started talking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And, no, it's good. I just wanted to ask a question, and I'm sure you guys were here. One of the speakers in public comment mentioned something about a group of people that got together to help a committee?
Back in 2016, there was a water
Yeah.
committee put together.
Okay, what was the basis of that? Because that sounds like a great, it almost sounds like what John
I
was.
think that's because we started wanting the public to be metered. That's a good, better term. And so then I know Jennifer Hopkins was on it, former mayor / council member Dick Barrow was on it, and we all sat down.
Frank Knoll?
Yeah, and Frank Knoll, yeah,
I
and,
came in at the very end.
yeah,
Right.
and that's
Right.
always
Jennifer
food for
Hopkins.
thought if you'd like to reinstate it.
Because we were restructuring
Yeah.
the meters.
Yeah, I think that's a really.
I didn't realize that was that funny, man, but it's okay.
I think that's a good idea to think about that. I'd like to learn more about
Yeah.
that committee. You said it was back in 2016?
Yeah,
Like
16?
15, 16,
Yeah.
something.
yeah,
Were you here then, Rebecca?
we met every week for a
15,
while
16.
there.
I wasn't involved in it, but.
No,
Okay.
It was strictly for restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Now that the restructuring took place, this recommendation is not to go backwards on the restructuring. It's simply to recommend an amendment to the rates and fees.
And we might be sitting here, but keep in mind, once we figure out how to get everybody in the city metered, we all know that a lot less money's coming in, because everybody's conserving. So, and I've said many a time, if somebody's meter is paying $100 for a quarter, good for him. I'm paying $174. So don't rush me. I'm helping to keep the monies coming into the city. But once the whole city's metered and everybody's bringing in less, guess what? That's nice. Now we're gonna have to raise the rates to keep things running. Okay. put teeth on my mouth.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's why we're here, is to ask questions.
I think when you're done, it's important maybe to read this.
Okay. Mr. Vashon, you look like you have a
Yes.
question.
Excuse me. Excuse me again. I know last year was presented to the board that there was 7%. I remember that number correctly-ish, 7% increase in the rates.
I think we had 3%.
Sorry, 3%.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's backwards. That jump from 3% to 10% is just going to get larger and larger if we don't start making some sort of rate increases. I think in the future, setting maybe a rate scale or rate calendar so that we don't have these giant jumps, because 10% is a lot. Necessary? Possibly, yeah. So I think in the future, if we're keeping in mind of making these committees, have it focus on creating those calendars so the rate structure matches what is needed rather than these years and gaps, which was partially not our doing because the pandemic happened and we couldn't control that, and out of the kindness of the city not raising rates. I appreciate that as well. But keeping that in mind, maybe these committees can be focused on that rather than restructuring.
That's a great idea. That's actually a really great idea. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else? Mr. Charbonneau, any questions
No.
for our panel here? Mr. Curtis?
No, John covered it.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you very much for that. Did-
Emphasize that last.
I'm going to, yeah, will do. I was just wondering if anyone else wanted to speak on the subject. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the percentages that I'm sorry, typing a little small, I can't see it. It's a 10% rate increase you're requesting, or is that the 9.97?
It's an approximate 10%.
And Madam Mayor, what is an example of somebody who doesn't pay property taxes, but pays the water rates? Is that like the high school and the hospital?
Yeah.
So the nonprofits.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for those questions, Chris. So I'm just going to read the last page of this again for those of you who don't have one in front of you. It says, questions from the public should be submitted in writing to the city manager no later than May 9th in preparation of our next city council meeting, which is May 15th, when questions from the public will be taken. This will give us time to prepare. And this document is online if you'd like to view it online. Thank you so much to both of you. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, do you have a particular date when you would like to vote on this?
Well, it's going to come in front of the council again next meeting, which is May 15th.
Yep, I did see that, so are you planning on voting potentially that?
Potentially, yeah.
But it would be for the water rates starting July 1?
I believe it's 60 days. Didn't it say 60 days?
It would end
after
up
the-
being the last billing cycle of the year,
Of the fiscal year?
the calendar year.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Good question, if I can. If we submit our questions in writing, do we get to see the answers before the council meeting where you're potentially voting in the increase? Or is it just going to be the council rate? It's information only for the council.
Well, it's gonna help it's gonna help frame the next meeting discussion as how we're gonna use that. We'd like to have the questions in advance so that we have time to do the proper research. So, I don't know, I guess we could have some back and forth, but it's really gotta be on the record. So, I guess in my mind's eye, if we get the questions, we can answer the questions at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, there's no
I
discussion
just want a
right now.
clarification. If we get answers to the questions we've submitted, and we have follow-up questions based on the answers, or anyone else in the audience has follow-up questions on the answers, are we allowed to make them, or are we restricted to whatever answer comes up?
I would hope that if you get it submitted by whatever the date was,
Yeah,
the city can go ahead and research it. But
yeah,
we, as the council, you know, they might research and send the letter back to you, but I would hope we all get all the questions and maybe with the city's response, and then we can determine how we wanna go forward. But if we don't, you know, if you sent something in by the 9th and you got it back on the 11th with an answer, well, you might be happy, but we don't even know what it is yet.
Right.
no, I know
Yeah,
that, but I
so
meant
we
can
need to know
follow
that
up?
too, yeah.
I fully intend to have discussion like we usually have when it's not a presentation, as it was tonight.
Right.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. So moving along, agenda item 5 is a governmental appointment to the Development Review Board. On April 26, 2023, the DRB voted unanimously to recommend that Mr. Dennis Chanette be appointed as an alternate member. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Chanette for a 2-year term?
Yes, I would be happy to make that motion to
Thank you,
put
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chanette on the DRB as an alternate member.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of appointing Mr. Chanette as an alternate member of the DRB, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. So the next item is going to be number 7, the capital improvement plan presentation. It's a schedule to schedule public hearings. And I'm going to read you the adoption process overview per Title 24, Chapter 117, Section 4385. Not less than 30 nor more than 120 days after a proposed plan is submitted to the legislative body of a municipality under Section 4384, the legislative body of a municipality with a population of more than 2,500 persons shall hold 2 or more such hearings. Failure to hold a hearing within the 120 days shall not invalidate the adoption of the plan or amendment. B, the legislative body may change the proposed plan or amendment, but shall not do so less than 15 days prior to the final public hearing. If the legislative body at any time makes substantial changes in the concept, meaning or extent of the proposed plan or amendment, it shall warn a new public hearing under subsection A of this section. If any part of the proposal is changed, the legislative body, at least 15 days prior to the hearing, shall file a copy of the changed proposal with the clerk of the municipality, with any individual or organization requesting a copy in writing, and with the planning commission. C, the plan shall be adopted by a majority of the members of its legislative body at a meeting which is held after the final public hearing. Citizens may comment during the 2 public hearings. The first public hearing will be held on Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. and the second public hearing will be held on Monday, July 10th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m.
We normally have a public hearing at 6, and then go into the council meeting at 6:30.
Okay, this document says 6:30, but can I,
We did that one other time,
Yeah.
and then people showed up after we'd already had the
Okay.
hearing.
so,
So normally we do it at 6.
so can we go ahead and change that in the minutes to 6 o'clock for both of those meetings? And both of those again, June 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And the second is July 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Thank you, John. I'd like to entertain a motion to schedule these 2 public hearings on June 5th and July 10th.
So moved.
Thank you, that's Mr. Vashon. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Item number 7. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So can you, somebody explain what that
What that means, capital improvement plan, what does that mean?
Not really.
No? Okay, sorry, I was trying to give you a copy of somebody's. It's
It's on the website.
It's a five-year capital investment plan. It's on the website. I'd like to give you mine, but I'm not going to.
That's what it's on the
Okay,
website.
Yeah, so it's on the website.
This is something.
And it explains what it is there.
Yeah. Actually, it's an interesting read. I read it last night.
Okay.
Agenda number 7, item 7 is new business. Mr. Johnson, do you have any new business?
I got one. I've got a vendor permit request
Just a minute.
from Rhonda Curry on the old time kettle corn. She's there every year.
Okay.
She's got the insurance and the payment and all that stuff. Just need a motion to approve it.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve Rhonda Curion vendor permit for her kettle corn. Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Vashon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried. Is that it, Mr. Johnson?
That's it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Charbonneau?
No new business.
No. Mr. Wilson?
No.
Mr. Curtis?
No thanks.
Mr. Vashon?
Nothing.
Ms. Dolgan? I just have a few things, just a few things I've done the past week that I wanted to share with you. Had a very informative meeting with the mayor of Winooski on Friday. Very interesting. I met that same day with Mr. Ernie Pomerlow and his team. Another very interesting meeting. Both very positive and both very encouraging. Green Up Day is this coming Saturday. A group from the SU will be meeting out here at the Parklet at 9 o'clock. If anybody wants to join us, you'd be welcome. And on that same day is the hike with the mayor at 2 p.m. at Bluffside Farm. And we're very lucky that we'll have a docent with us, Dan Kilborn, who will do the walk and explain many of the wonderful things about Bluffside Farm. It starts at 2 o'clock, about 2 miles, and it's family friendly, and everyone's invited, so I hope a lot of you will be there. It's shown a lot of interest. A young constituent that I have had the pleasure of subbing for at Newport City Elementary School found some keys on her way home from school, and instead of leaving them there, she ran back to me, because I was walking home too, and asked if I would announce at this meeting that I have some keys in case anyone lost them on Elm Street. I'd like to thank Vea for being so kind to do that, because she could have left them, she could have thrown them away, or she could have kept them, and she knew that I was the mayor, and she asked me to announce it at the meeting. So if you've lost the keys, I have them at home. And the next agenda item is old business. Mr. Johnson?
None.
Mr. Charbonneau? Mr. Wilson?
None.
Mr. Curtis?
No.
Mr. Vashon?
No, thank you.
Ms. Dolgan?
No.
I have something I'd like to say. I'd just like to thank the city manager and Rebecca Terrian and all who worked really hard to release the attachments on Friday evening. It met with a lot of great feedback, and I think the community appreciated it, so we appreciate you. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, I'd like to set the date for the next regularly scheduled council meeting for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 6:30 in these council chambers. I hope you'll attend, and I hope you will bring others. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I have one question about the executive session. So the appointment of the assessor, I wanted to make the council aware that there was an issue that arose during my property tax dispute in reference to how the pay rate for the assessor was established. And the select board, or the city council, the two terms are interchangeable, is the body that must set the pay for the assessor. That's by statute, 24 VSA, section 933. there was confusion as to whether or not our current assessor was a contracted vendor or an actual employee of the city. The assessor received the raise that all of the other non-union employees received, yet he bills under his company name by invoice, and he had no expenses listed on the budget as an employee himself.
Thank you for that, Ms. Jearling.
So those are issues you're gonna wanna take a look at through this process. If he's a contracted vendor, you need to get a copy of the contract. 'cause
Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
I just want to clarify that no, he is not an employee of the city.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. So the council will now vote to go into executive session to discuss 2 items under Title I VSA 3A3. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Vashon. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second made by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say no. The ayes have it, motion carried.
Madam Mayor, this is for both 10 and 11?
I beg your pardon?
This is just for 10 and 11 or just 10?
This is for 10 and the city assessor.
Oh, I thought there were two, I'm sorry.
There are, yeah.
Do you expect to make any,
A possible vote. So I'd like to invite the city council members, Ms. Dolgan and Mr. Cheney,